Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We'll start with a short statement from the Secretary-General, followed by your questions.
Good afternoon, and it's good to see you all here in the press theater. Tomorrow, NATO foreign ministers will meet here at NATO Headquarters, and we have much to discuss. As we look ahead to the next NATO summit in Ankara in July, allies will address the evolving threats to our security. They will review the action taken to strengthen our deterrence and defense. And we will also meet in the NATO Ukraine Council with Foreign Minister Sybiha, along with the EU High Representative Kallas. As we begin to look ahead to our next summit in Turkey, we will examine the evolving threats and challenges to our security, including from Russia, and how we are progressing on the crucial decisions leaders made in The Hague. Allies agreed to invest 5% of GDP on defense, including 3.5% on core defense spending, in support of men and women of our armed forces, as well as to provide all they need to protect us: aircraft, tanks, ships and drones, as well as cyber and space capabilities. That commitment to invest more in our security was a major leap, which recognized our changing reality. And since then, we have made meaningful progress. Each week, I see new announcements from allies working to boost their capabilities. But this is only the beginning of a long road, and we cannot be complacent. We must build momentum and hold each other accountable as we work to keep our 1 billion citizens safe. Increasing our investment is only truly effective if supply matches demand. And that's why we are also rapidly scaling up production capacity. Across NATO, allies are working hand in hand with industry to ensure we are producing what we need and innovating to ensure we stay ahead of the curve. This is a win-win for our societies, bolstering our security and our prosperity, and also creating jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. Turning to Ukraine, we all recognize that our security is deeply linked, and we are all working to bring the war against Ukraine to an end with a just and lasting peace. We welcome the ongoing efforts led by the United States to make this a reality. And I'm confident that these sustained efforts will eventually restore peace in Europe. At tomorrow's working lunch of the NATO Ukraine Council, we will be joined, as I said, by Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sybiha, and the EU's High Representative, Kaja Kallas. As we work for peace, we cannot lose sight of Russia's increasingly brutal attacks against Ukraine. Russia is systematically targeting civilian infrastructure, depriving Ukrainians of heat and light at the start of winter. Russia is not alone in this war, as China continues to be its decisive enabler, and Iran and North Korea also provide support. Since the earliest days of Russia's full-scale invasion, allies have shown unwavering commitment to Ukraine. In recent months, European and Canadian allies have provided billions of dollars of essential US equipment to Ukraine through Pearl. This support is an important part of our ongoing efforts to ensure Ukraine has what it needs to defend today and deter future aggression. And still, there is more we must do. I expect allies to announce new contributions in the coming days. So it's clear that we have a challenging agenda ahead. But allies have shown that they are ready, willing and able to work together to ensure we can tackle the challenges effectively, keeping our 1 billion people safe today and into the future. And with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Okay, let's start right here, second row on the corner.
Hello, Vladunga, Romanian National Television. Secretary General, how does NATO reassure Romanian citizens that they are protected in a context where more and more drones are falling on Romanian territory or enter in the Romanian airspace? How do you see the concrete implementation of the Eastern Sentry activity to prevent other drones from violating Romania's airspace?
Well, thank you for that question. And I had a very successful meeting in Romania, I think it was now 3-4 weeks ago in Bucharest. And obviously we are working very hard at these problems. So first of all, you mentioned already Eastern Sentry. That is basically bringing together all the alliance is doing when it comes to the eastern flank, from the Black Sea up to the High North. And that is progressing rapidly, involving all military elements of the alliance. And part of Eastern Sentry is, and this is to your specific to your question, is to make sure we will get better and better at tackling the drone threat, both by drone production ourselves and making sure that we have our hands on the latest technology, but also when it comes to anti-drone technology. So that is an integral part of Eastern Sentry, and I can assure you we are progressing rapidly, and this is important, with help, for example, from Ukraine, through our JTEC joint center in Poland, where we basically share all the lessons learned also by Ukraine, specifically when it comes to drones, of course, but also generally in this terrible war of aggression started by the Russians.
Okay, fourth row in the very center, Interfax Ukraine.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Goedemiddag.
Goedemiddag zelf.
Jazeker, why not? So the question is, as Mr. Witko right now is in Moscow and negotiation regarding US-led peace plan for Ukraine is still under negotiation, we all know that old version of 28 points also include NATO. Like Ukraine has to give up his ambition to become a member of NATO and so on, so on. You know what I'm talking about. In her speech, President Ursula von der Leyen already said nothing about NATO without NATO. So I would like to know what is your opinion on this. Do you foresee that NATO will step up in this negotiation and when? Thank you.
Well, when it comes to the NATO elements, obviously, when it comes to the NATO elements of a deal to end the war against Ukraine, that will be dealt with separately, and that obviously will include NATO. And when it comes to your general comment, I think it is very good that the US has putting forward proposals. You need to start somewhere. You need to have proposals on the table. As you know, both in Geneva and 2 days ago in Miami, talks have been taking place with the Ukrainian side. Indeed, talks today with the Russian side. So we follow that closely, and I think it's really important that the US is leading these efforts, making sure that we do whatever we can to end this terrible war.
All right, coming over here, fourth row on the end, R&D.
Thank you very much. Here I am, over there.
Hi.
Sven Christian Schulz with German newspaper network R&D. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov announced that Russia wants to use the peace negotiations to achieve its goal in the war against Ukraine. So do you want to see Russia, instead of Ukraine, making significant concessions instead of demanding the maximum here?
Well, obviously we want the war to end, but with a sovereign Ukraine and a situation where Russia will never ever try again to attack Ukraine. That's key. The talks are now underway. I've stopped years ago to comment on Lavrov, on Putin, or on Peskov. I've met them all in the past as Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and I can assure you, let them talk and not always react.
All right, and just next to him, AFP.
Yes, thank you, Martin Anton for AFP. Coming back to the NATO membership of Ukraine, which was Ukraine not being a member of NATO was part of the original US plan, as far as we know. And even though it's not in the latest proposal, does the Ukrainian NATO membership remain a bargaining chip in the negotiations with Russia? And is the absence of US Secretary of State Rubio tomorrow a sign for the relevance of NATO in this process?
Well, starting with your second question, Marco Rubio is very much involved, of course, in all of this when it comes to ending the war in Ukraine. You've seen him chairing the meetings in Geneva and in Miami. I've been and the teams are in constant contact. I personally am in constant contact with him. So he's working extremely hard, having to take care not only of the situation in Ukraine, but of course many other issues which are on his plate. So I totally accept him not being able to be here tomorrow, and I would not read anything in it. We will have Deputy Secretary Chris Lendau here. I'm very happy he is here. So I think that's all covered. When it comes to your question on the 28-point plan, I mean, we have moved on. The 28-point plan was this original plan. I think all these negotiations always start with an initial draft. Otherwise, you cannot start the process. But we have moved on. We have had, as I said, and you know, Geneva, we have had the meeting in Miami, and of course, today talks taking place in Russia. This specific question on membership of NATO for Ukraine, I think it's important to maybe separate the principle from the practical. The practical situation is, as you know, that there is consensus required by all allies for Ukraine to join NATO. And right now, as you know, there is no consensus on Ukraine joining NATO. When it comes to the principle, that's the Washington Treaty in 1949. And that Washington Treaty still stands, and also what we decided in the Washington Summit in 2024.
Okay, we'll go to just behind the riser, first row.
Thomas Kutschka with Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We've seen a number of attacks recently, hybrid attacks, that have been directly attributed to Russia, including the incident in Poland. How do you think NATO should respond to this? How can NATO deter Russia from future attacks like this on NATO soil? And do you agree with what the chairman of the military committee just said, that NATO nations need to become more aggressive in countering these hybrid activities, so basically hitting back?
Well, first of all, let's agree that NATO was founded as a defensive alliance, and of course that is not going to change. But having said that, we should at the same time have no doubt that we can and will ensure our security, whether the threats we face are conventional or these threats are hybrid. And that's one of the reasons why the leaders, when we came together in The Hague, agreed on a revised hybrid strategy. Because we know this is the reality of today. Hybrid and cyber, they are the realities of today, and we have to confront them. Of course, we cannot always tell you exactly what we do, but you know the strategy, and we will keep continuing, making sure that we are safe.
Okay, we'll come over here. Second row, Politico.
Hi. Hello, Victor
Hi.
Jack from Politico. I have two quick questions, if that's okay. The first on the Ukraine peace plan. Apart from the accession of Ukraine to NATO, does NATO have any specific red lines when it comes to mentions of the alliance within the peace plan? And second question on Pearl. As allies look to make the program sustainable into the coming years, can you tell us some of the ideas that you're thinking about in terms of making that work in the long run? Thanks.
Yes, on the first question again, this is all coming from the 28-point plan, and this has moved on. It was good that it was there, because you need to start the process somewhere. We have had a number of meetings, and as I said, when it comes to NATO, and whether that is, anything about NATO is mentioned in a deal to end the war, obviously that will be dealt with separately with NATO, etc. On Pearl, the good news is that at the moment we are on track. We needed about 4 billion by this time of year. We started in August, 1 billion a month, and we are now at 4 billion. So we still have some work to do on December, but I'm quietly optimistic, cautiously optimistic that we will also get December done. And then for next year, of course, we need to make sure that for the whole year we have at least, again, 1 billion a month to buy this essential gear from the US. And can I stress how essential this is? This is stuff which we do not have in Europe in terms of production, and or because of stockpiles. And this includes offensive, but also defensive elements in the packages. And one of the things we will be discussing tomorrow with the foreign ministers are how to take this forward. So I put forward some proposals to make sure that where this year it was cap in hand, And I don't mind going cap in hand and happily do that for Ukraine. And so many allies have now contributed. We have seen recent announcements by countries like Norway, the Netherlands, and Canada and others. I think we have now about 2/3 of the alliance participating in Pearl. But we need a little bit more this month, December, and we will get there, and then next year on a more secure footing, so that it costs me less time. But I'm not interested, not important here. If necessary, I will keep on going cap in hand. But we will discuss that tomorrow to get it on a more secure footing.
Okay, and just next to him, the woman in the black jacket.
Ksenia Polska from Deutsche Welle, Ukrainian and Russian. So going back to the membership of Ukraine, which Ukraine believes would be the best security guarantee for it, what other security guarantees could NATO provide to Ukraine? Or what other security guarantees could NATO be part of? What options are on the table now?
Of course, I cannot now disclose what is being discussed concretely today, but you've seen some of that debate taking place over the last 3-4 months. And one element of that discussion is the coalition of the willing, under the leadership of France and the United Kingdom, coming together to discuss how, post a long-term ceasefire, or even better, a total peace deal on Ukraine, how to make sure that Ukraine can be supported in a way that Russia will never attack again. So to make again the mistake we did with the Minsk agreement, where basically Russia was willing to try again a couple of years later with the full onslaught, unprovoked in 2022. You've also heard the Americans saying we want to participate in the security guarantees. I think that was a very important moment in August when that happened. And of course, those discussions are still taking place. We now have to bring the war to a point where it ends. And then, of course, we have to make sure that we hammer out all the details. But a lot of work has been done by the Europeans, also working closely together with the Americans to make sure that post the peace deal, we can have security guarantees in place for Ukraine so that they are as safe as possible. Of course, building on the Ukrainian armed forces as the first layer of defense for Ukraine itself.
Okay, we'll finish the end of this row, and then I promise we'll come over here.
Руслана Брянська, Громадське радіо, Київ. Secretary General, you met yesterday with Denis Shmyhal, the Ukraine Minister of Defense, yes, and to discuss strengthening Ukrainians' air systems, and were any agreements reached?
Yeah, so it was not that we had to reach agreements. It was basically taking stock of the situation. And indeed, air defense systems for Ukraine are, of course, always high on the agenda. The defense systems, but also the interceptors to be used in the systems, through the systems. And this is something which is also central to this Pearl initiative, next to all kinds of offensive stuff. This is an important part of it. There is a lot happening bilaterally, also between European nations and Ukraine, to make sure that Ukraine, and particularly the innocent civilians, but also the civilian infrastructure, is as much as possible protected against these totally crazy onslaughts by the Russians. And we have seen this weekend, again, some people are saying again, a sort of record when it comes to missiles and drones hitting Ukraine, killing people. And our thoughts and prayers are, of course, with those families of the bereaved ones, but we want to make sure that we do everything possible. And this was high on the agenda, not to reach an agreement, but really to take stock of where we are and how we can even do more.
Okay, coming over here, we'll start with Reuters, second row.
Thank you. Andrew Gray from Reuters. Secretary-General, does NATO stand by its declaration in Bucharest in 2008 that Ukraine will become a member of NATO?
Well, you have seen the Washington summit outcome, which clearly stated that there is an irreversible path for Ukraine into NATO. You know the Washington Declaration that any country in the NATO hemisphere, that means the Euro-Atlantic, can apply for membership. Ukraine clearly applied for membership, but we also know, as I said, and this is a statement of practicality and a statement of fact, that there is no unanimity within the alliance about Ukraine coming in the alliance. And that's one of the reasons when it comes to a future peace deal, we are discussing how, if not NATO membership, how we can make sure that Ukraine is